Welcome back to another episode of Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation, right here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. We've got a great show in store for you this week. Later in the program, we'll be joined by Mingus Union High School wrestler Aleana Cricks, who will talk about joining the recently formed girls program. We'll then be joined by AIA Executive Director David Hines, who will break down the modified winter season. But on the other side of this break, we'll be joined by Prescott High School wrestling coach Cody Collett, who talks about taking over the program for the first time this year. All of that and a whole lot more right here on Off the Bench. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in Northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am joined by a very familiar face to the program, Prescott High School's football/wrestling coach, Cody Collett. Coach Collett, welcome back onto the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, very much so. We loved having you on during the football season. You mentioned that you were also the wrestling coach now over at Prescott High School. And we thought, well, why not bring on Coach Collett to talk about that wrestling program? This is your first year coaching wrestling at Prescott, but I do want to make it clear this is not your first time coaching wrestling in general. You started as an assistant varsity wrestling coach at Dobson High School, your alma mater, for about 9 years before moving on to Red Mountain High School. How did that time sort of, build up your love for wrestling and also sort of build you as a coach?
Well, I got to work with Steve Tannenbaum, who's actually the principal now at Williamsfield High School. Really knowledgeable guy. Russ Weiner, who is kind of a dean of wrestling coaches in Arizona. He was a Dobson coach for 30 plus years. Got to learn every single day some stuff from those guys. Got to coach with Dave DiDomenico at Red Mountain, who's also a big time wrestling guy in the state. So got the chance to be around some guys that were so passionate about the sport, and I really realized with the great lessons and things it can teach you. It's a tremendous sport. I love it. I love the competitive aspect of it. I love watching guys kind of excel and do things they didn't know were possible. And I really, really enjoyed that time at both those places, getting to work with all those guys and getting to work with some great kids as well. I love football. I always love football. I think it's the greatest team sport there is, but there's something really unique and special about kind of seeing a kid come off the mat after a big win. And obviously it's a team sport as well, but the individual aspect of being there on the mat with just you. There's nobody to tag in. There's nobody making a block for you. There's nobody upstairs. Yeah, no, none of that. No. You can't put anything in your tights to get out there. And it's a great sport. I really love being a part of it.
Yeah, it is very much a primal sport. One of the original sports. They've been wrestling since the Greeks in Greece or Athens, or obviously I'm not a great history major, but regardless, it's still been around for a very long time. Wrestling has been very prominent everywhere. You graduated from Dobson High School, as I mentioned. You go on to be a coach. You did play football when you were at Dobson. You also were a competitive weightlifter. No wrestling on the resume when you were attending Dobson High School. So what kind of got you started with wrestling?
Well, number one, and I tell our kids this, and I mean this, in the football season, I can be trying to think of the word. It's ironic as a football coach, I love the off season, and during the season, I don't think you get to build the relationships quite as well as you want, because there's always the next thing. There's the next film session, the next this, the next that. Yep. And I felt like in wrestling, one of the things I really enjoyed the most about it when I was coaching at Dobson, and we had a ton of football players out for wrestling, is I really got to know those kids on a personal level more easily in the season, because – and you're preparing. I'm not saying you're not preparing and doing those things, but there's no 7-8 hour film sessions for your next wrestling match, at least not that I have been a part of. And they're definitely not with the players, but I mean, Saturdays during the season in football, Saturday and Sunday is preparation. And, and there's always something to go next to. But one of the things that appealed to me most about wrestling was getting to be around those kids all year, kind of form those relationships, and, find out more about them on a personal level. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Really enjoyed learning from those guys, because like I said, the guys I worked with have forgotten more than wrestling than I know. So getting to work with those guys was a real pleasure.
You do bring up a really good point about the preparation between football and wrestling. As you mentioned, with football, you can kind of get an idea as to maybe what run scheme they might go with, maybe what blocking scheme they go with, what pass offense they run. But wrestling, while there are obviously techniques in wrestling and there is a component of that preparatory work, it's not necessarily going, okay, when this guy's got his arm around your shoulder, we know that he's going to go with his foot or he's going to do this move. Unlike football, where you go, okay, if they're third and long, they're more than likely going to pass. We know that they're going to pass the ball downfield. So it's quite interesting, that separation between the two preparations for both sports. Were you involved at all with the wrestling program at Prescott before you took over as the head coach?
I did the strength and conditioning last year for Coach Carbajal. He did a great job and is also a very knowledgeable coach. I wasn't in the room, but I did a lot of the strength conditioning stuff with them, and that was certainly enjoyable. Getting to do that aspect, work with the kids. That's something I'm kind of focusing on right now as well with our program. Coach Perkins does a great job technique wise. We got a number of different guys in the room that have really, really solid wrestling backgrounds. So that part's been fun. I let them rely on the technique and do those type of things. And I've been worried about strength conditioning and other aspects of the program building first and foremost.
It's kind of nice. You've got that technique-based coach in Coach Perkins, who we will talk about in a little bit. And then you've also got kind of that strength coach in you, where you guys coming together to build a much stronger program with both of your knowledges. As you said, you kind of handled a lot of the strength and conditioning last year for the Prescott wrestling team. So you bring that knowledge and experience into the head varsity coaching role this year. And then you've got Coach Perkins, who can kind of fill in the gaps of the technique work and, produce more well-rounded wrestlers. As we mentioned, you are the football coach over at Prescott High School, along with being the wrestling coach now. Any challenges between preparing for the football season compared to the wrestling season, making that transition?
That part was tough, because we had been practicing for 2 weeks in wrestling by the time I got in the room, actually. So we I played Mingus the last week and then played in the playoffs against Cactus. So it was 2 weeks before I got in. Now, obviously, everything's been pushed back, and we still don't have a match till the 20th. So we've gotten plenty of time in there. But I think one of the challenges and I think it's in place in football wise. Our culture is in place in terms of our off season work. We understand what it takes, the process, so to speak, to be a solid football program. I think we understand that. I don't think we're there wrestling wise yet in terms of that, but enjoying trying to get there to teach these kids that it's not just a 3-month season. It's committing to making your body right and making the right choices and doing the things in the classroom and all those things that make up a great program. And we're trying to get those implemented in wrestling as well.
As I said, you are also the football coach. Is there any kind of cross recruiting going on where you go, well, maybe I need a couple of alignments, so I'll go talk to the wrestling team, or, maybe I could use a couple more lightweight guys, so maybe I'll go take some guys from the football team. Any kind of bleed in between guys playing both sports?
My goal eventually is for it to go, wow, all these guys wrestle and play football. Unfortunately, with some of the difficulties with COVID and things like that, we haven't quite been able to get there. We do have some football players on our varsity roster that I think will be one of them's, competed in state last year. made the tournament as a freshman, and we have some football players in there that are wrestling, but I'd like it to be more, no question about it. And I think we'll be able to do that more so in the years to come. When I was at Dobson, in any given year, I would say out of the 14 weight classes, I would say probably typically 10 to 11, sometimes even 12 were football players. Right now, we have some work to do in that regard to get to that point, but that's the plan. I love the crossover. I love all our sports at PHS and everywhere. I would encourage every single kid to get that gets the opportunity to compete in everything they can. One of the things that I think is so cool about football and wrestling and track, and there's some other sports that fit this role, is they're so inclusive. If you come out for wrestling, you're going to wrestle for us. And if you come out for football, we have 3 levels, and I think my job is to find a spot where you can contribute somewhere. And I love that about football and wrestling and track. And I think there's other sports that can do that. Whereas, and this is not a knock on those sports, I think it's awesome for those kids, but there's 650 boys or something at our high school campus. Only 12 of them are going to make the varsity basketball team.
Of course.
Only, 14 or 15 of them are going to make the varsity baseball team. So one of the things I really, really like about football and wrestling is if you want to come out and compete, we'll give you that opportunity. And I think that's a great aspect of both sports.
You talk about kids playing different sports, but you yourself have coached numerous sports throughout your career. Like I mentioned, for those of you who don't know, Coach Collett is the wrestling and football coach over at Prescott High School. But throughout your career, you've coached multiple things, including track and field, as you mentioned, baseball, obviously football and wrestling. Each sport is obviously different, but is there anything that sort of bleeds through where you kind of go, oh, okay, well, this technique here or the coaching style that I use for this sport can translate to another sport you happen to coach?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that's interesting about, for instance, I'll give you an example in football. I always tell our guys pass blocking is a combination of playing defense in basketball and a little bit of boxing, getting the punch in there in terms of, separating and doing those things. So that's an example. The number one example that bleeds into everything is compete. Anytime a kid gets a chance to compete, I think that's a good thing. I think competition is a great thing. You're going to have to compete in life. And that's what I love about high school sports. I did coach baseball for 1 year, which amounted to me sitting at first base with some sunflower seeds and kind of hanging out there. I was an assistant for baseball because I was friends with the baseball coach. I know less about baseball than about anything out there, but I did enjoy watching the kids compete. Same thing with track. I did that for a couple of years, and I enjoyed watching the kids compete in that. So that's the overwhelming theme is anytime you get a chance to compete, I think you should take advantage of that and do it because I think it'll help you down the road. And I love the process. All the sports, I think, are special in that way. But you have to do so much work just to get to one game day. That's one of the things I think that makes football really special is you only get 10, in a normal year, 10 guaranteed game days. Wrestling, you can do some club wrestling and baseball and obviously basketball. All those have that. But I love getting the chance to see kids compete.
Yes, very much so. It's something that I feel a lot of coaches definitely share that same sentiment, whether they do coach just one sport or multiple. It's getting a chance to, help coach these kids and turn them from, not really knowing a whole lot or not knowing certain techniques to becoming very good athletes and very good student athletes. And it takes that passion for a good coach to want to go, I want to make these kids better. I want to see them succeed. I want to see them compete, like you said.
The other great thing is if grade wise, if they're involved in a sport, they have to be doing it in the classroom to be able to play.
Also true.
So that's another aspect that is really, really important. You have that carrot of you're not going to get to compete if you're not getting it done where you need to. I also do the public address, and I'm the announcer for boys basketball too. Oh. So that's one of my favorite roles on campus as well. I enjoy that a great deal.
Are you one of those guys that kind of gets hyped up, or are you just sort of, saying the names? I've seen it both ways with PA announcers. On a side note here, I want to get in my personal philosophy of public address. Okay.
I definitely in the starting lineups get them amped up, try to get when there is a normal year in the student sections going, try to get them excited about, and the kids kind of enjoy the announcing process and the starting lineup for your Prescott,
Hey,
and we do all that. But I don't announce. You're not supposed to. Once the action starts, the next time they should hear you is, 3-point goal by Collins. You don't call the game. It's not like like you do for Mingus football. That's not what you should do as the public address guy. That's just my opinion. But
no,
anyway.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes, there is a quite a strong distinction between your public address announcer and your play-by-play broadcaster.
Exactly. Yes. Very much so. And I think some guys mistake that. I don't think the crowd needs to hear and he's back to pass and he's rolling around. I mean, for you, obviously. But for the people in the stadium, no, they don't need to hear that. They can see.
Yes, or they can tune into Verde Valley TV or KYBC to tune into the Mingus broadcast and listen.
I watch a ton of your guys' broadcasts, obviously, because you are doing region games. So if we haven't gotten the film yet, I get on there and watch some stuff on there as well.
Oh, good. Fantastic. You do add you're not alone in coaching wrestling this year. You add Coach Perkins. For those of you who do not know who Coach Jack Perkins is, coached several years with the Humboldt Middle School team, as well as the Prescott Valley Club Wrestling program. He also won 2 state titles as a wrestler in high school. Coach Perkins brings a lot of experience. What has the collaboration with Coach Perkins been with you? How have you been able to build that relationship with him as you both sort of step in, him not so much with coaching wrestling, but you being your first year coaching a varsity program at Prescott High School?
Coach Perkins is awesome. He really has a tremendous knowledge base. He has a great rapport with the kids, does a fantastic job. Really, really have enjoyed getting to know him and getting the opportunity to work with him. Been really, really impressed with how he handles things and how he works the kids and has a positive atmosphere. He does a tremendous job. I've really been excited about being able to work with him. And I'm hoping we can get the numbers up in the years to come and really advance our program is the goal. But he's an outstanding wrestling coach. Coach Wapel said we have a couple other guys that have been there helping that really add a lot. Anytime you're a head coach of it at any level, you got to have great people around you. And he's all those guys are tremendous. Coach Perkins, like I said, can't say enough about how impressed I've been with him.
Well, we are definitely excited to get the winter season kicked off, Coach. We talked to you in the fall. We talked to you in the winter. Maybe we'll talk to you in the spring. I don't know if you want to go be the assistant coach for the baseball team or track or whatever you want to do so we can get you back on the show. But regardless, Coach, we will be definitely touching base very soon here.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it and everything you guys do for high school sports in the area.
Yes, thank you very much for being so available, and cannot wait to start calling some games. I know we don't technically call the games, but I think John Russ does call Prescott games in that gorgeous gymnasium that is behind you. Before we let you go, Coach Collett, you mind showing everybody that gorgeous gym behind you at Prescott High School for those who have not been inside of it?
I'll do best I can. I'm let's see here.
I know we go on radio, so I do want to say that if you have not been to Prescott High School, it is an indoor gymnasium. Obviously, they call it the Dome. Gorgeous facility, beautiful blue stands with the certain seats highlighted in yellow to say Badgers, and I think the other side may say Badgers as well.
The other side's is in right now, but yeah, it's a great gym, definitely.
Yes, very, very beautiful facility. Coach, best of luck on the season going forward. We cannot wait to see what the Badgers offer in 2021.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will be joined by Mingus Union High School wrestler Aleana Cricks, who will talk about her time on the wrestling mat over at Mingus Union High School. Off the bench, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year.
A new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am joined now by Mingus Union High School wrestler Aleana Cricks. Aleana Cricks. I got it right. Welcome on to the show.
Hi.
Wrestler over at Mingus Union High School, currently a part of the wrestling program in general. Mingus has a boys and a girls program like most of the schools here in the 4A Grand Canyon region. Aleana, how did you get started as a wrestler?
So my friends, on my sophomore year, they were like, hey, wrestling is a thing now. The girls are going to do it. Do you want to do it with me? And I was like, I'm doing basketball right now, but I think that the sport might fit me more and like my interests. And so me and a group of my girlfriends, we all joined the team, and I'm really glad that I did because it's been really fun since. Nice.
So no family members or anybody in the past being a part of the wrestling program over at Mingus?
No, not at all.
Okay, very much setting the trend. You are very much setting the trend as you are currently, and I want to say currently, the only girls wrestler for Mingus High School right now. Do you feel any pressure being the only female representation on the wrestling program? Again, I want to clarify for now.
I do sometimes, but it's not so much pressure. It's kind of like myself wanting to make my coaches proud and my teammates proud, being the only girl. And so I kind of put that pressure on myself. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You were a part of the wrestling program last year, so you did get a chance to wrestle under Coach Danny Schultz. What did Coach Schultz teach you during that time at Mingus?
She taught us a lot. It was really nice because she really helped us like integrate into the team as girls. And it was nice having a girl coach, and she often like reflected her experiences from being a wrestler for us, which was nice because she'd been really experienced in that. So,
it must have been pretty nice to have somebody who was not only a wrestler at Mingus, who had also played under Coach McKean, but also somebody who was relatively the same age as you, as Coach Schultz had graduated Mingus not too long ago before she took over the program over at Mingus.
Yeah, having somebody that was our own age was really nice because it was easy for us to, relate to her, and we got along really well.
So obviously we are still patiently waiting for the start of winter season to kick off. We know that we will be getting started hopefully January 18th. We'll be joined a little later in the show by AIA Executive Director David Hines to discuss just that. But Aleana, how have you been preparing for the wrestling season so far, considering all of the COVID-19 hurdles, I guess is what we'll call it?
Yeah, there's a lot of COVID has definitely put a damper on our season and some of our training, but our team are really resilient. We have really good coaches. So, everything that sets us back, we're finding a way to get over it, and we're all working really hard. Yeah.
Again, we are joined by Mingus Union High School wrestler Aleana Cricks. Aleana, your focus in the off season, has it been mostly on your technique or mostly on gaining strength for wrestling? What's kind of been the focus for you?
So for me at practice, I focus on my technique because being this my second year and me be sitting out most of last year, I didn't get a lot of that knowledge that I needed, and we didn't get, summer practices and off-season practices. But outside of practice, I am working hard to gain my strength so I can, hopefully blend in with the boys a little bit better. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and you're very much setting the trend. Like I said, currently the only girls wrestler for the Mingus Union Wrestling program. You were also a swimmer over at Mingus Union High School, just got done with swimming season. What got you started with the swimming program? Was it kind of like, you had mentioned playing basketball initially, and then a couple of your friends were saying, hey, come join the wrestling program. Was that very similar in your choice to swim over at Mingus?
Well, I'd actually been swimming on our Cottonwood Clippers team ever since I was, yay high. And my brother, he swam too. So swimming has just kind of been in my family, and I've always really loved it. And so I've just done it ever since I was younger. So it was really natural to just go right into the Mingus team once I got into high school.
Is there any sort of difference in your preparation for the swim season compared to the wrestling season? I got a chance to speak with Emma Warner, who is over at Northern Arizona University. She's a former Mingus swimmer. She kind of talked a little bit about the cardio aspect of swimming, but I know with wrestling, there is obviously the cardio aspect because, you're grappling with another person for about what could be 20 minutes. Is there any kind of difference in preparation, or is it just sort of a different sort of workout style when you go from swimming season to wrestling season?
I think they're both definitely two different workout styles, but they go together really well because swimming is a lot of cardio and you end up very lean and very stretched out. And that's really good though, because a lot of my muscles are very, they're very, bendy because of swim. And so when I go into wrestling and I'm thrown around and stuff, I have that flexibility to be able to take it, which is nice.
Do you find any sort of difficulty going from that sort of cardio-based lean aspect of swimming to sort of having to put on possibly weight or muscle during the wrestling season?
Yeah, I think it's hard, but not, I don't think it's physically hard. It's more like mentally hard, to look in the mirror every day and just be like, I'm going to go do this. I'm altering my body, and because it's like you really have to change your body's mindset about what it is you're doing. So your body's like, oh, we're going from floating through the water to getting slammed onto a mat. It's just an adjustment.
Yeah, very much so. And how do you kind of find yourself? Do you have any tips for getting into that mental state that you just sort of mentioned?
Something that really helps me a lot is like when we're doing our cardio at practice, our coach, he's always like talking about motivational things. He's like, you're getting your hand raised on that mat, getting that state championship, walking away with that pride and stuff. And for me, being able to hold myself as a woman in like a very male dominating sport is kind of like a huge motivator for me. And just making my coaches proud. That's a big thing.
Do you have any sort of athletes or people that you look up to when you kind of look at the wrestling realm? I mean, I know there obviously is the Olympic aspect of wrestling that people usually carry on to after college. There's not necessarily a quote unquote professional wrestling league. Of course, there are the staged wrestling leagues like the WWE and stuff like that. But UFC, a lot of former UFC fighters like Ronda Rousey and Holly Holmes, of course, probably did wrestling in high school. Do you look up to anybody specifically?
So Ronda Rousey, my dad, he likes to watch her a lot, and he's all like, hey, you could do this in a match. I'm like, it's not the same thing. I think that'd be illegal. But yeah, I do watch some of her with my dad a lot. But people that I look up to generally are like an ex-teammate of mine, Zoe Arwine. Yes. She was a really great athlete at Mingus, and I look up to her a lot. And she's now wrestling in college. And I look up to a lot of my teammates. I really do. Yeah.
Are there any kind of difference in coaching styles when you go from Coach Westbrook in the pool to Coach McKean on the mat?
Yeah, definitely. Coach Westbrook, she has a very like motherly feel to everything. She's very like soft and caring and stuff. And McKean, he's like, you're gonna get this work done. He pushes you really hard. He's kind of like a bitter love, but it's nice. He makes you better.
Sort of that good parent, bad parent. You've got the
good cop, bad cop.
Exactly. Good cop, bad cop. Exactly. You've got sort of the comforting nature of Coach Westbrook. I've had her on the show before. I've spoken to her many times. She's very, very kind. So nice. And I've also spoken with Coach McKean, very much business focused, wants to show success. He was obviously a wrestler with the Mingus Wrestling program and just wants to continue that tradition. Again, we are speaking with Mingus Union High School wrestler Aleana Cricks. Aleana, along with wrestling over at Mingus, playing basketball for a short time, being a swimmer, you were also a part, you did not participate this year, but you were a part of FFA last year, or the year before, and you earned a red ribbon in Class 4 Junior Market Swine Show program at the Verde Valley Fair. I'm from California, in Southern California specifically, so whenever I hear somebody win a swine contest, I go, wow, great. What is that? Why are people showing off pigs?
Yeah.
It is very, very prominent here in Northern Arizona that I've learned. I love the rural aspect of this area, but how does one raise a red ribbon winning pig?
So, usually it's, a lot of it has to do with, where you get the pig from. So we would go pretty far, to get a good pig, and we do our research for it. And then a lot of it has to do with how you feed it, making sure it's not too over muscular or too much fat, and you have to exercise it. There's a lot of science to it, but it's also kind of just like a flipping a coin, because sometimes what you do just doesn't work, and sometimes what you do does. Sometimes you don't have to do anything and the pig just looks amazing. But it was really fun for the time that I did it. I really enjoyed it. It taught me a lot of things.
Yeah, I'm definitely not a farmer, but I am for sure a connoisseur of pork products. So I love me some bacon and pork shoulder here and there. But, like I mentioned, you were a part of FFA. Was that sort of, again, anybody in the family a part of FFA? Did you just kind of look at it as a good extracurricular to have on the resume? Or, again, much like with wrestling, did somebody say, hey, Aleana, you should come and hang out with us here at FFA and help raise this pig?
So, it was a huge thing in my family ever since I was really young, and my brother, he did it too. And so I just kind of naturally went into it. And I started off with chickens, and then I went to rabbits, and then I went to pigs, and pigs out of all the animals I showed were my favorite. And that's why because it was such a big part of my family, it was definitely a hard decision to not do it this year, but I think I had good reason.
Okay, I want you to rank these three in order of, not importance, but in order of this is what you would want to do. So 1, we've got winning a team relay for state championship in swimming, pinning somebody in a state championship for wrestling, or winning a prize at a swine contest.
That's difficult. Oh, wow, that is difficult. I think pinning somebody in a wrestling match, I think that has the most satisfaction, and pure, I put every single thing, in that moment, that every single thing that you did yourself, nothing else, no other factor could have gotten you to that moment but yourself. And I like that.
Okay, definitely. I can see that. You're throwing your body around, you're lifting another person, you're using all of your force. Like you said, it's mostly just you, where, you said a little earlier where if you're raising a pig, it could be mostly just a good pig, or, you don't have to do too much to raise them, relay, probably swimming, a little more team centric. So yeah, I'll agree with that. Definitely pinning somebody is probably a lot of fun. Obviously you being the only wrestler on the girls program, do you get a little more satisfaction when you pin one of the guys during practice?
Yeah. So my coaches, they'll see me get thrown around by the guys. I usually get beat up a lot by the guys, which I enjoy. So when I finally do make that step of improvement, and I pin a guy, or I get it out of a move or something, my coaches hype me up for it, and it makes me feel really good. I like it. It makes me feel like I can fit in with the guys.
Do you have any specific stories about maybe flipping somebody on their back at practice that kind of shocked everyone when they were watching you?
I think there was one time where there was this one of my wrestling friends that I wrestle him a lot. His name's Andy, and he always, ever since the beginning of the season, we would work together, and he would always beat me and stuff. And I think there was one time where I got a reversal on him, and I got out of a pin, and my coach was sitting there, and he was like, yeah, you got this. It was really fun. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite memory at Mingus in general?
I
know you're still attending the school currently, so you still got the rest of the season to go through, but is there anything that jumps out?
I think one of my favorite memories from Mingus was probably state at swim last year. Okay. That was a really good memory, because it was when I had all my friends, with me. We all got to stay in the same room, and it was a really good bonding experience. Yeah.
Very fun. As I mentioned, you are a senior this year, so you will be graduating Mingus Union High School.
I'm a junior this year, actually.
I'm sorry, you're a junior. So great. This is why we do prep beforehand. But you're a junior, so you've still got some more time over at Mingus. But never too early to think about your college plans or your plans after high school. In your junior year, not your senior year, do you have any plans right now, or anything you're thinking about looking at that you might be pursuing after you do graduate from Mingus?
So I have a lot of doors open to me right now, and I don't want to close any of them. Okay. But I'm actually through our local AIA chapter. I have a scholarship, and I'm working towards hopefully getting my private pilot's license. Oh. And with that, I definitely want to make that a part of my life when I'm older. So I'm probably going to go, to college for that, or maybe go into the Air Force or the Air Force Reserves, just something that's going to get me forward in, my flight training. Cause at the end of it, I would like to be flying for airlines. That would be nice.
So from a prize-winning pig to swimming in the pool to going to the mat for wrestling, and now taking to the skies possibly and flying some of those big Boeing planes that take us from one point to the next point. Aleana Cricks, bright future ahead for you, and I want to thank you very much for coming on the show. And best of luck on the season. We're getting real close to the start of the winter season, and best of luck. We can't wait to see what the Marauders have to offer this wrestling season.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Definitely.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will be joined by AIA Executive Director David Hines to talk about that winter season on the other side of this break. Off the Bench will be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation. I am now joined by AIA Executive Director David Hines. Mr. Hines, welcome back onto the program.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm really glad to be back with you.
Well, as I told you before we started, you are officially our most reoccurring guest, which is a good thing considering your title. And we do have a lot to talk about regarding some of the decisions the AIA has made for this upcoming winter season. So initially, the start date for the winter season was, I believe, January 5th, but it was pushed forward to January 18th. So I think that's a good place for us to start, is why did we see that delay from the initial date to where we're at now?
Well, I think, honestly, the biggest thing was we knew after Thanksgiving and after the Christmas, New Year weekends, we knew that the cases would kind of continue to rise, which we've seen that they have. And we wanted to, one, do our part, respect the request of the Sports Medicine Advisory Committee. I think the big thing that they were, and what we've really kind of narrowed down to, is hospital capacity. And we always had hospital capacity. That is shrinking as we go. And part of that is because cases have gone up, and people that do go to the hospital, they are taking up beds. And so that, because that is limited, that's kind of a major concern. I understand that it may not be our kids, the kids competing, that are the ones in that situation, but they are around family members that could be in a position to go. So that was one of the bigger things. We felt like if we could get 2 weeks past that kind of New Year's onslaught that would come up, then that would give us a better opportunity to get started and to be able to go to completion, hopefully with no interruption.
Okay. We do see a lot of modifications. We saw the modifications in the fall season. It does make sense. As you mentioned, we did see a rise in cases here in the state of Arizona, and it seems more of a precaution for when students come back from school or they come back from a game or come back from practice to make sure that they're not spreading it to their more vulnerable family members, as you just said. As I mentioned, with the winter modifications, we did have fall modifications as well. Some do carry over from the fall. Obviously, wearing masks on the sidelines is definitely one. The schedule change, which we will get to. But this time, unlike the fall season, there will be no fans in the stands. And I want to clarify that that's to start the year. There will be no fans. What went into that decision as well?
Well, main thing, honestly, is, again, we're in this pandemic that we were very concerned when we were at 300 cases per day. And then we were concerned when we were at about, 1,000 cases a day. And ironically, when we've seen 17,000 cases, we feel better if it drops down to 5,000. And that's probably not the best thing in the world for all of our people. However, and I think people have to understand that all of our coaches start tending to be more in that concerning category too. And without the coaches, now we have a problem there too. So really, the point with no fans is that number one priority is the kids can play. And when we have, again, 2 of the 3 sports that we have are indoor sports, that's more concerning. The intent is not to go the season with no fans. The intent is to get the season started. And because we are at a higher number of cases that we're seeing, we do want to try to get the kids to play. Mm-hmm. So if we can get the kids to play, and if we are playing 5-on-5 with no fans, that's different than playing 5-on-5 and then having 1,000 people in the gym. And that becomes more concerning from that standpoint. The intent is, let's get started. Let's see where the numbers go. If we can start relaxing that number, we certainly will do that. And as we go through the season, our hope is that we can relax that more and more as we go through.
Yeah. And again, taking as much as you can to sort of mitigate the spread of COVID-19, I know is what goes into a lot of these decisions, including the fans. Not to say that the fans are not important, but like you said, the most important thing is getting the kids to play the sports. And I would much rather see kids playing sports with an empty gym, as weird as the atmosphere is. And again, this isn't negating at all the importance of fans being there, but it's a lot easier to have the sports go on with no fans than it is to try to force fans in there. But we did see in the fall, we saw some schools, specifically Bradshaw Mountain High School here in northern Arizona, who did not have fans in their home games during football season. But Mingus Union High School, again here in the 4A Grand Canyon region, did opt to have fans at a very minimum capacity, but fans nonetheless. So my question is this an AIA mandate, or is this more of a recommendation? Because as I mentioned, we did see sort of that 50-50.
That's a great point, and I think that's what's really difficult for some of our parents to understand. What's the difference? Well, the difference is when we started football, the number of cases per 100,000 was, at the time in our counties, remember, we're under 75 per 100,000. And that was a metric that we had to use. So with that metric to be able to get started, then those decisions were left during the regular season to the schools or the local entities. However, because we are now, all of our counties are somewhere between 250 to 500 cases per 100,000, and hospital capacity is narrowing, then just to start our sport, we had to make the exception, no fans, to even get started. And so that's where the difference is when we when we started the sport, if we were at the 75, 100 cases per 100,000, we wouldn't have that. But we had to, as the sports medicine recommended, the governing board, and had to step in and say, look, here's our priorities. And you make a great point. It is important that we have fans. We want to have fans. We want the parents to see their kids. We want the community to be involved. However, we all have to realize we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we have to do what we can to mitigate the opportunities that we don't spread any more than we have to. So.
Again, we are speaking with AIA Executive Director David Hines. One of the bigger question marks regarding, sports-wise is what was going to happen with wrestling. As we know, wrestling isn't necessarily as protected as, let's say, football, where you've got pads and, maybe you do have a little bit more protection, not to say that it matters too much. But, wrestling is very much, almost bare skin to bare skin. You're right up next to somebody. So, how does the AIA expect to mitigate the spread of COVID-19 during wrestling season, considering it is there's a possibility it could be a very high spreadable sport?
Well, and I think the one sport that has dealt with these type of things for years is wrestling, because one of the things that we've always dealt with is skin issues. And there are skin issues that are deadly. MRSA and some of the things that can be very dangerous that are spread is something that the wrestlers have had to deal with. So with specific mitigations put in place, trying to work with a partner in practice day after day, there's actually less opportunity to spread amongst different people in wrestling. Obviously we've given some recommendations for the wrestling coaches that if we can get to a bigger area where it's more spread out, that would be more advantageous. I mean, obviously we can see some wrestling rooms are very small. Typically they're very hot, that they've done. If they can help reduce that risk is one. One of the things we've always seen in wrestling is a lot of times coaches do a lot of training with their athletes. They do a lot of work in showing moves and things like that. So we have a modification that no adults are physically working with the kids, that it is strictly athlete on athlete. The other thing is, in a wrestling match, you only have one individual wrestling one individual.
Right.
You don't have where actually the bigger concern for sports medicine was basketball than wrestling, because now you're 5-on-5, you're a lot of time face-to-face. Wrestling, there is some time, but a lot of the time they're not face-to-face. Yes, they're in contact. The other thing, a wrestling match lasts 6 minutes at the most. And so there's a limited time. And if you do have a case of COVID and you need to contact trace, it is much easier to contact trace in wrestling than it is in football, because you could have 60 kids and what is close contact? Well, if you're within 6 feet, you could be in 6 feet contact with 60 people. Now that's exponentially more, where in wrestling it could be one-on-one. So those are things that we have in place. And again, I think the wrestling community coaches are accustomed to doing things very specifically, cleaning mats, the protocols that they use, shower after matches and things, which in some sports kids just don't do like they used to do. And so, again, it is concerning, but we also want our kids, they have been wrestling all along in USA Wrestling. They've shown that they can do it without major issues. So, we're going to be cautious, but we would like to move forward.
Yes, very much so. And you do bring up a great point with the contract tracing. It is obviously a lot easier to go, okay, David, you wrestled Philip, so we know who you wrestled, so we know which one of you may have given each other COVID, as opposed to basketball, where one quarter you're guarding somebody, and next quarter you're switching on defense and you're switching around different guys. You know, I played basketball in high school. I can tell you how many times I've been breathed on while standing down low in the paint or standing over by the wing. It happens a lot. What does this mean for the spring season? We did see a few issues, with a few teams getting that COVID exposure and having games canceled or having games pushed, or for the instance of Coconino High School girls volleyball, they had to basically play an entire, 5 or 6 games in a week span. They had to crunch their season as quickly as possible. If we do see, and hopefully we won't, but if we do see and we do run into that possibility again, I'm going to keep knocking on wood as much as I can, but what will happen if we do run into the issue of a COVID exposure? I mean, will those games be canceled? Will they be kind of condensed? Will they be pushed into the spring season? I know it's very important to get that spring season started. So what is the plan if we do get a COVID exposure like that?
Well, the positive thing is we are meeting with our conferences on tomorrow, leadership, and just to verify what a minimum number of games that would be needed to qualify. So the fortunate thing, like volleyball, unlike football that could only really play once a week, if you missed a game, you can't just go make up the game. Hey, next Wednesday, let's go ahead and play. And then, well, by the way, we're going to play on Friday. That's just not realistic. However, with our spring sports, we have the opportunity to play multiple days. So we have pushed the season, or even though we're starting late, we have moved a week or two into what would have been our spring. We did push spring back to March 1st. And so we also have the discussion with the conferences if they want to end when we typically end, or do we want to push the end of the season back a little bit more towards the end of May. We're going to give them some options for there. So we aren't intending necessarily to cancel games. We're going to use the model that volleyball had. They tried to make up as many games. We just took a scheduled contest, didn't play it on that day, but may have played it later in the season. So if you do not get to play that, it is a no contest. It's not a penalty for the teams. And I think we found that in volleyball, in that case, teams played 97% of all the games that they were scheduled. So hopefully, if that trend would continue, we should be okay.
We do kind of have the added benefit when we do move into the spring season where we will see a lot more outdoor sports, baseball, softball, track and field, obviously, which does sort of help to significantly reduce the spread of COVID-19. Not to say the threat isn't there, but what did the AIA learn from the fall season that they're sort of implementing here? What lessons were learned last season that are moving into this one?
Please be flexible. I think that, our coaches, our kids, our athletic directors, administrators have done a terrific job. I think the thing that we found, again, this is more anecdotal information than scientific information. It is safer to be at school and in practice and in competition than it is to be out. We've seen that in contact tracing. That is absolutely what we have found at our schools when they have had a case, they contact trace. It didn't come from school. It didn't come from practice. It didn't come from competition. It came from when they left school, they didn't follow the mitigation strategies that are required at school or practice or in contests. And I think the big thing is when we talked about, and you did make a great point, our modifications are, all of our coaches, sideline personnel, and things like that have to be in masks. It makes a difference whether, I don't like wearing a mask, but if it's going to help and it's required, that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. We still do it to this day. We've done it for 9 months in our office when we're here. If I'm not in my office by myself, then I have a mask on. When we go up and down the hall, we wear a mask. If we go talk with one of our coworkers, we have a mask on. We had a meeting going on this morning, 8 people in the boardroom. It's a big room. Everybody's in a mask. Everybody's 6 feet or more apart. We do all the things we can to help prevent the spread. And part of it is it's trying to do our part to try to keep it as safe as possible. And I think it has shown statistically that it works. So if it works, until we get out of this thing and until vaccinations can get further along, let's do what we can to keep moving forward. So I think that's the biggest thing we learned, that it's unpredictable. We're kind of on pins and needles all the time. But I do think that everybody did their part in the fall, which helped make it be successful. And I can't applaud them enough. I think our tournament, our staff did a lot of work on the backside with changes and those things, because honestly, our guys work about a year in advance, when it comes to venues and trying to set up tournaments. We just don't run a basketball tournament. We run 12 state basketball tournaments. And so for an individual to put all that together for, multiple games per conference, it's a lot of work, and they do it really well. And they were able to adjust. We had schools that helped us out. It's a team effort by everybody involved with the AIA, schools, administrators, coaches, kids. They were fantastic. And I think we learned that, hey, we can make it work. It's just going to be different than we are accustomed to.
Going to said it better myself. The AIA Executive Director, David Hines. Mr. Hines, thank you again for coming on the show. We will have to bring you back at the start of the spring season to talk about some of the modifications that happened there. And hopefully we will get to start sports on January 18th. We're excited. And again, thank you very much.
Philip, thank you very much. Really appreciate this.
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, more sports on the way right here on Off the Bench. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Two things we can count on every year:
a new set of tax rules and great weather here in northern Arizona.
Jackson Hewitt Tax Service, locally owned and operated by Lewis Rice since 1997, is here for you all year long.
Your neighborhood Jackson Hewitt Tax Office will help you in all of your taxing situations.
Electronic filing is always free with your tax preparation at Jackson Hewitt Tax Service.
Get more in return. Call 1-800-234-1040 for an office near you.
Welcome back to Off the Bench, Northern Arizona Prep Sports, presented by Rice Accounting and Jackson Hewitt Tax Services and Cottonwood Parks and Recreation, right here on Verde Valley TV and KVNA 104.7 FM. I'm your host, Philip Catafamo. I'd like to thank all my guests for coming on the show this week. I'd like to thank you for watching and listening all 2020 and now carrying into 2021. And I do have a question, and I hope that some people will be able to answer it. If you have a student athlete or a coach who you think would be great for the show, please feel free to send me an email at sports@myradioplace.com, and I would be happy to schedule a time to interview them and get them on the show. Again, sports@myradioplace.com. If you have a student athlete or a coach or even a support staff who you think would be great to come on the show, sports@myradioplace.com. I'd be happy to schedule a time with them and talk to them on this program. Again, Happy New Year, everybody. Hopefully 2021 will be a lot better than 2020. We're getting very close to the start of the winter season, and we cannot wait to continue our coverage of sports all season long, right here on Off the Bench. That's going to do it for this week's show. We'll be back next week with some great interviews and some more coverage of all the sports here in northern Arizona. With that, I want to thank my guests for coming on the program one more time. Thank you for watching and listening. I'm Philip Catafamo, wishing you a great rest of your week. We'll see you next time.